So, it's been a long day. My neurons are very stimulated. And yeah, here I am, the clash of instinct and culture. This is a little piece of some of the work that I'm doing, kind of bringing a expanded sense in my dissertation work to sexuality, to instinct, to world, and our understanding of human nature, which in my work, I do embodied healing, leading groups, and so this is kind of my passion to kind of give it a theoretical, philosophical, psychological lens. And like Zayn, I'm doing a theoretical dissertation as well. So, I'm going to begin. And I have a kind of a very complex vision here, so I've articulated some notes that I'm going to follow very closely to try to constellate what it is that I'm going to present right now, as I'm speaking, as you're listening. So, this talk is a work in progress. It reflects a process of inquiry and summarizes my current work on an article that investigates the clash of instinct and culture by reconceptualizing our understanding of instinct. What is the value of instinct for us as transpersonal scholars, psychologists, philosophers? And while I don't have time to relate all of the information that my article covers, I will thus have to assume a certain level of comprehension on your part. So this talk is focused around two main questions that's driven by a central thesis. The first, what is instinct? The second, in what way is human instinct different from that of other instinctual manifestations? Human instinct versus instinct in a more than human cosmic world. So the basic thesis that guides these questions is that if we remain blind to the instinctual dynamics of human nature, we may perpetuate a culture that is in fact antagonistic to human nature. It is a thesis that is guided by my work, leading workshops, as I said, with holistic sexuality, that seeks to reveal the whole identity of the human being, despite constrictive developmental patterns that our society has conditioned. Put simply, an essential question is how we can live through the whole of our potential in a world that only welcomes a small portion of it. How then can we be whole in a fragmented world? In my research, I feel that a key to this enormous question, that I have no doubt involves a multiplicity of answers, involves fostering a new relationship to the reality of instinct. We have already seen many keys here today, and I'm here to open the door to yet one more. It's a big door. So to do this, I'll briefly take you through the development of the concept of instinct in Western thought and suggest a novel understanding that links us to our embeddedness in cosmic evolution. Second, I will turn from this general sense of the role of instinct in animate life to the problem that an investigation of human instinct reveals. In this way, I will also highlight the continuity of human beings with the rest of animate life, and yet also point out the discontinuity by examining the evolutionary roots of human morality. To this end, Freud's psychology of the instincts provides a basic framework for the way in which instinctual energy is shaped in human development. So, instinct, what is it? If we look to the tension of instinct and culture in Western thought, from Plato and Aristotle, we see a clear distinction made between humanity's rational faculty of moral judgment and the irrational instinct of animal nature. Civilization is depicted as necessarily governed by reason. Its role is to control and subdue our beastly nature, and thereby allow the virtues of reason to shine. And, skipping ahead for the sake of time, it was not really until the publication of Darwin's Origin of the Species that the concept of instinct was changed in popular consciousness, by bringing to light the deep similarities between animals and humans, Darwin's research challenged the theologically entrenched notion of the divine supremacy of human beings and the supremacy of reason over instinct. So the concept of human instinct, through the influence of Darwin and Freud, became a major topic of scholars for a number of decades, becoming the focus of numerous publications. If you look at the 1920s, 1930s, it's all instinct. What is instinct? Instinct. What is instinct? Yet, the challenge of speaking concretely about human instinct foreshadowed its dismissal as a relevant subject of inquiry. Freud had noted, quote, "The instincts are mythical beings, superb in their indefiniteness." His work was struggling to articulate what are these instincts. But with the rise of behaviorism in North America, the problem of instinct was largely forgotten as more concrete answers were sought. Reductive answers as well. The concept of instinct, so cherished by Freud, is largely absent in contemporary psychology, outcast by its own indefiniteness. It finds its only home in ethology and denotes a fixed action or pattern of behavior that is specific to an entire species. For example, the instinctual behavior of sea turtles who, born on the beach, crawl towards the sea when hatched. The baby turtles know where to turn and will, without instruction, make their way to the sea. There's a sea turtle. Despite the many shortcomings of the traditional ethological view of instinct, i.e. its commitment to biological determinism and scientific materialism, the idea that genetic codes trigger the turtle's response rather than the turtle has its own sentient awareness of the crashing waves of the sea, of the wind and the sun, of the sand from which the turtle emerges. So these attempts to articulate human instinct in this sense by denying this more lived experience have failed. Humans, in neglecting the subjective dimension of lived experience, attempts to define human instincts often remain generalized abstractions that lack an anchoring in the bodily dynamics of human behavior. It is forgotten that instincts, however one might define them, must necessarily involve a dimension that is experienced from a particular perspective, the perspective of a living body. Each of you, listening to me now, instinctual beings, taking in my words, breathing, your hearts beating, your sweat glands palpitating. The inclusion of the subjective dimension of instinct opens the possibility of articulating a more holistic account of instinctual nature, the instinctual nature of animate life. This possibility relates the instincts of a species directly to its nature, that is, to the structural or bodily dynamics of the organism in dynamic relationship to the world in which it is intricately embedded. Once we recognize that no behavior is entirely fixed in the ethological sense, because it is contingent upon the living dynamics and contextually specific environmental circumstances of the organism, then a more holistic account of instinct emerges, an account that recognizes the whole of the organism, both its structural and phenomenological realities. Instinct in this sense can be thought of as the unfolding of the behavioral motility of the organism across the lifespan, the movements to the whole of the existence. In my article, I expand upon a novel understanding of instinct as the bodily kinetic intentionality of the organism embedded in a complex, interdependent relationship to a meaningful world. Here I will simply say that rather than trying to specify complexes of instincts, Instinct can be understood more broadly as, it's pretty broad, the flow of existence itself, what it means to exist, to move as an existing being. It is existence that is lived from birth to death. I try to revive Freud's understanding of instincts as mythical beings by articulating instinct in such a way to construe it as the flow of cosmic evolution, an ancient primordial wisdom that is specifically manifest in the bodily dynamics of a given species, and more narrowly, a given individual. It is an understanding of instinct that reflects an enchanted cosmos, wherein life emerges out of a cosmos that is already living, albeit in a different sense. This expanded sense of instinct reflects an instinctual teleology that flows through the contours of a natural or cosmic law. Such a law reflects an instinctual morality that is rooted in our somatic natures and indicates the degree to which human culture is or is not aligned with this primordial moral code. From this new understanding of instinct, a crucial question emerges. Why does human instinct lead us into the realm of ethics, as we followed Freud? Why is it that no other species has to deal with morality? What distinguishes us from the instinctual dynamics of other species? Is it our souls, as Plato thought, or something else? Time is running short, and there is much that I would like to continue to say. So I will try to answer these colossal questions by turning to Freud's psychology of the instincts. Very briefly. So Freud recognized that humans were unique in their capacities for neurosis. In his view, neurosis was caused by a distortion in the flow of instinctual energy. In this sense, human development, which is important to remember has taken place over millions of years of evolution, is like building a dam across a wild river. Here's the Colorado, for example. The dam constricts and focuses the manifestation of a particular amount of the river's original energetic potential. And there are degrees to which this happens organically and to which severe trauma is involved. Yet in any case, over the course of human evolution, human self-reflective consciousness is then differentiated from the reservoir of split-off instinctual energy. In this differentiation, dualism emerges, as there is now for the first time something that I am and something that I am not. There is good and there is evil. No longer is there the undifferentiated flow of the wild river, like the birds and the bears, but a schism, a dam, a separation between living and dying. This dam is immediately evident by the fact that we're sitting here in this box, and you're sitting silent in your seats, and you're not naked, and you're not running around licking each other and jumping around and going crazy. You're very well constructed in the dam that has channeled your flow of consciousness and differentiated your ego, your awareness. So consciousness is differentiated, but the building of the dam is not without a cost. It is a painful process, for in it we are separated from unity, and human suffering is born. Freud symbolizes this in the struggle between Eros and Thanatos, between self-actualization and distorted pain, between good and evil. He painted this as the ultimate tension, yet problematically he projected it onto the whole of animate life. Projected it. He failed to recognize that while there exists a continuity between humans and non-human species, there also exists an important discontinuity. That is, humans suffer consciously. In other words, humans face the problem of morality. This problem continues in many contemporary instinct theorists. Freud's problem of projecting good and evil onto the whole of the cosmos. Many of these theorists speak about dolphins who are rapists, apes who are killers, who join tribes and have malicious killers. Selfish genes is another example, where genes become selfish. Projecting human morality onto the largely, with differing degrees across different species, instinctual undifferentiation that we find in non-human life. Questions of morality are unique to the human species, an essential aspect of which is the awareness of our own deaths. In this process of differentiating human consciousness, a new shocking awareness was born, something so terrifying that it embeds fear into the cells of any organism. Our life will end. We will die. An essential question that emerges then is, how can we as a species engage death not as a polarity antagonistic to life, but as a natural process of the cyclical nature of existence itself? Can we as a species embrace our fear of death without somatically contracting against it, as would a deer in the face of a lion? Or must we create ideologies of immortality, whether they're personal, nationalistic, religious, etc., that are based on this hidden fear? Not to say that they're not beautiful visions of immortality, and the immortal cosmos and the eternality of the flow of human existence. But to what extent does this instinctual fear lurk beneath? And in denying death, in that sense, we're denying the immediacy of life. Can we then imagine a time when the human species can, while not denying any aspect of its nature, hold the paradox of recognizing the undifferentiated unity of life, while also breathing the differentiation of its own consciousness, and in so doing face death with open arms? While we are undeniably a long way from such an awareness as a species, it remains a potent horizon towards which our human nature calls us. To face the oneness, the unity, to breathe it, and also breathe our own differentiation, our own awareness of suffering, our own awareness of death. Kind of speaks somehow to what Zane was saying of the cyclical and linear time in terms of unity and differentiation as well. Anyhow, that's a wrap. To conclude, we can say that recognizing this process of differentiation and thereby waking up to the nature of our nature involves the following potential points, which I don't have time to go into too deeply. On the one hand, recognizing the uniqueness of human suffering, and thereby the roots of morality. What does it mean to be human versus non-human? What does it mean to suffer, to know pain? And how does that impact what it means to exist as a human being? Number two, to wake up to our unconscious charges of energetic motivation. Much like the reservoir that we left behind, it's a whole another big piece in my project. Those energies that have been marginalized, that have been cut out of us, how do we bring them back? How do we allow the wild river to flow in a way that's concurrent with our current space and evolution? Number three, recognizing the vulnerability at the core of animate life, the natural role of fear. That's the last section of my article that I don't have time to get into here. I had a whole nother talk on vulnerability and the role that vulnerability plays. And the last one, death is a part of life. And yet the trouble that we face in our society as psychologists or as people who are caring to promote this is that it involves a deep level of care, love, support, safety, that we're just beginning to foster. And we have a long way to go. We've come a long way. Another part in my paper is looking at World War I soldiers, victims of war, which is where Freud's psychology really found its power. And anyway, I won't go into the grisly stories and the way in which the soldiers were treated and executed if they showed vulnerability, mental frailties on all sides, all fronts. And here we are, able to speak about it and bring consciousness to it. So that was less than 100 years ago. Someone's scared to go to war and they're shot. Here I was going to play potentially a John Lennon song, but I couldn't get it together. I decided not to. So, it is my hope that through educating ourselves as to the nature of our human natures, we may one day obtain a new awareness, such that the clash of instinct and culture will cease to be a clash, and instead exist as a harmonious blending of human nature and the life of nature itself. And so that's the kind of big way that we're ending the day here today. And I'll just say that for me, my passion is really like connecting to this wild river and helping people to maybe deconstruct their dams, to some extent, and allow that fresh, vital energy to flow. And I open it up. We have just a few minutes if anyone has comments or questions or inspirations or resonances. We have the time to do it. And if there's none, I understand because we're ready to go home. Yes, sir.
Quick question on the authenticity of our instincts and that flow of the river, that naturalness. I was wondering your insights on the role of violence within human instinct. We are by nature herbivores, omnivores. We are meant to hunt. There is a violent instinct in us. Anyone who has seen war or thought about war knows this to be part of human nature. I guess I was just curious on how, you spoke about studying soldiers and that experience. How to live authentically and acknowledge that part of our being.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a powerful question. Well, for me, it comes into recognizing the whole of who we are as human beings. So I might have this passion, desire to kill someone on the one hand, I might also have the reality of, I like to eat meat and I'm, participating in slaughtering animals and sacrifice and so forth. For me, the question is, to what extent, if we include the whole, if we're really conscious of the whole of who we are, for instance, maybe there's also certain energies that we hold that respect life, that don't want to kill, and that there's a certain tender sensitivity to others' vulnerability, as I experience my own vulnerability. And so it's kind of like holding this fine line, this paradox of saying, yes, I want to kill, yes, I would love to run bloodthirsty into battle with my axe and sever heads, or whatever it might be. And at the same time, I also love to, cherish life, and to grow seeds, and to, nurture loving relationships. So it's like holding those in balance. And so in the work that I do, a lot of the work is really getting deeply, deeply in touch with the essence of not just one instinctual aspect such as aggression, but also a deep, instinctual aspect of caring and nurturance. And how can, this wild, vital dragon, this tender, innocent child, come together and dance, and what's the role? So it's kind of, I could keep going, but that's kind of my response.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.